Hello, I'm Craig DeRoche, CEO of Family Policy Alliance. Our partnerships include 40 state level public policy councils that impact millions of lives. One new leader in our movement is Nick Adolphsen, who serves as the executive director of the Christian Civic League of Maine, folks. And if you want to talk about experience advocating for families, the Christian Civic League of Maine is our oldest serving organization. Nick is a lifelong Maine resident, and he grew up as the son of a pastor and carpenter, instilling in him a deep faith and a commitment to hard work, service, and standing for truth. Nick began his career as a carpenter and a laborer before he began his work in public service. And then he got a job as director of government affairs at the Maine Health and Human Services, and later as a senior health policy advisor for Governor Paul LePage. He was one of the good governors of Maine. He then served as a state affairs director at the Foundation for Government Accountability. And he just is obviously a very conservative, very experienced leader in Maine, lifelong Maine. And honored to have you here with us, Nick. Congratulations on the job. Welcome. You've already been in the movement your whole life as a Christian, but tell the audience, how'd you end up here? How'd you end up leading the Christian Civic League of Maine? You can choose to tell us what the Christian Civic League is first, and then how you got there, or vice versa, how you got there and then what it is.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, sir. It's great to be here with you. Great to be part of this movement. So, yeah, the Christian Civic League is the oldest organization of its kind, I think, in the country. We started as a prohibition organization, actually, many, many years ago, 1897. I have this great painting on the wall in my office of I don't even know, it's somebody getting saved from alcoholism, probably painted like 1908. But so we date all the way back to that era, and really the objective of the Christian Civic League has been for all of that time to help engage the church, engage the Christian community in public policy in the State House. And I think there have been eras where we've been more successful than others as far as how we're able to influence the State House, but have consistently been a strong voice inside the state capitol and around the state for good conservative biblical policy. My route to here, I would say, is a little circuitous. It's looking back, God always has a plan, right? And he puts you in different places for different reasons over time. And growing up in a pastor's household, in a very patriotic household, a place where I was taught to love this country and to love it because God gave it to us, right? He gave us this place. He gave us the liberties that we have. Public policy originally founded on the truths of the Word of God. And so grew up knowing and understanding that, but started in politics of course, started in some campaigns, but started really at the Department of Health and Human Services, a place I would say at the time I really had no interest in going to, but it was an opportunity that I knew God had put in front of me. And as I got into the Department of Health and Human Services, I began to understand just how deeply public policy affects families, how public policy affects kind of the cultural boundaries that exist, and that state government drives a lot of the tone, a lot of the tenor, a lot of what we see going on in our communities. And man, I mean, we ran into a lot of stuff that had happened in the prior administration.
I want to jump in first because, Maine is, I love Maine, by the way. I didn't know the whole Maine, Massachusetts thing and all the rest of it till I went up there and visited. But fair or unfair, we think of you as a sleepy state, maybe, other people. Stephen King lives there, but that's about the most exciting thing. There's not a lot of murders and mayhem or wars fought up there, other things like that, football teams or basketball teams. But you've been throwing around your fair share of national news here. So welcome to the club, Nick. Tell us about how that's been. You've been kind of in the news this year in 2025 more than normal.
Yeah, we sure have. And it goes back to the left's sort of ownership of this, and talking about state government and talking about the governor currently, Governor Mills, and they're not used to having anybody step in the way and stopping them from this very radical left-wing agenda. And so yeah, Governor Mills made some national news as she sort of challenged President Donald Trump in a roundtable discussion and really drew both the president's ire, but also a national discussion to the state of Maine and how I would say how radical our policies have been here in the state of Maine. And um, Craig, our policies are radical, but our legislature, there's about a 3-seat majority in the House right now. If we had won 3 more seats, we would have a Republican Speaker of the House. A couple more seats, and we would have had a Republican Senate President. We're not California or Massachusetts electorally, but our legislative leaders act like they are, and they act like nobody can touch what they're doing. And the policies they passed the last few years have really illustrated that.
So you get involved right there. You roll up your sleeves. What I love about this too, what I love about it, so much crazy and stupid things have been fought about in the last decade where people don't know the difference between a state and a federal constitution. And I get that that can be complicated if you don't work in our business, but the federal government, our audience mostly knows this, Nick, but I'm going to say it to some of our new listeners. The federal government exists to protect our civil rights. They actually are the ones that are supposed to go into a state if they're allowing babies to be killed and saying, you do not have the right in your state to do that, or experiment on children or other things like that. When they said black people can't go to the University of Alabama, that's a denial of someone's civil rights. And that is the federal government's job to say we have a 14th Amendment and you can't do that. That is what Donald Trump is doing. He is going in and he's protecting our civil rights. He's restoring the right for Christians to eat and dine at restaurants, for women to compete in women's sports, for all these civil rights. It's confusing to people because the left held themselves out as civil rights warriors from a remnant of the 60s, Nick, but that wasn't true. It was the Republican Senate that passed the Civil Rights Act of 1965. We're seeing remnants of that. Why is it that it's the conservatives in Maine that are sticking up for women's civil rights? And is that starting to resonate in Maine and give you the hope that you can win these 3 seats? Is it because people are waking up like Simone Biles, a leftist icon? I mean, as an athlete and a gymnast, she's an icon. Everybody knows what she's done. She represented our country well. But she did a mea culpa in the last 2 weeks as a progressive leftist and said, I didn't think about it that way. I want women to have the chance I had. Is there a chance that could happen in Maine?
Yeah, I think so. I was saying before our legislation, our legislators act like it's California or Massachusetts, but it's not. The electorate is much, much more in the middle. And I think we have, for the first time, people waking up and saying, wow, okay, so maybe I'm not as conservative as Nick Adolphsen at the Maine Christian Civic League, but I know what a woman is and I know what a man is. And I don't want my teenage daughter to have to compete with a biological male in the pole vaulting competition or the cross country competition. And I think we've seen a number of people wake up. I've seen a number of folks kind of find their voice that have spoken up. We've got a couple of high school girls here that have spoken up and been on the national news repeatedly for just speaking what is true and speaking what is right. And people fear speaking up in a difficult political environment. These girls have more than anything else gotten accolades from folks saying, I'm glad somebody's saying that out loud. And so, yeah, I have a significant amount of hope for the future of this state, that we can turn things that maybe the folks in the middle are finally seeing, wow, this is where our leaders have taken us. This is the wrong direction.
And this isn't just your contribution, which has been wonderful this year, by the way, to this debate. I think your governor contributed to the debate. I think if everybody would have accepted that executive order, it wouldn't have allowed us to point out just how radically insane what they're asking for is. I don't think that the American public would have understood. They would have thought we were making it up. That's how ridiculous what they're asking for is. Nick, what I say is the difference between Riley Gaines and Rosa Parks is Rosa just got there first. Riley Gaines worked for like 21 years, a lot more than 10,000 hours to stand on that podium. And the fact that the left doesn't know what a human being is, should lead us to understand why they don't understand what a human being's civil rights are. But you're taking these fights, and you're taking them seriously, and you're building around them. You've introduced. Tell me about LD, and tell me what LD is. By the way, we normally talk about Senate bills and stuff like that. LD 380, and you're doing that at the state level too. You're trying to protect families in Maine, and you're really trying to grow the Family Policy Council around the most controversial issue. That's what I wanted people to hear. You're not running away from what's hard. You're actually trying to do the hardest thing first. Tell everybody why you chose that and how that's going.
Yeah, I mean, we can't walk away from these things that are foundational to a good society, let alone a biblical society, right? And so LD 380, I mean, it is I'd say a baby step back from where Maine is today. So today, Maine allows 16 and 17-year-olds to begin transgender therapy without their parents' consent. And LD 380 just stepped back and said, okay, we're not even going for the whole thing right now. We're going for, let's make sure parents are involved at a minimum, that 16 and 17-year-olds aren't making decisions on their own to begin something as significant as transgender therapy, the hormonal or even some of the counseling without their parents engaged. And like I said, we've seen the church, we've seen people that I would say are in the middle politically that have engaged on some of these issues and some of these conversations, and they're on our side on this stuff.
And that's this is why I wanted to have this discussion with you, and I wanted to talk about it with Maine. I want our audience to remember some things about us that's different than other people. A lot of national organizations, and we work with them, and we love them that they do this. It's just not our calling. They start with Congress. They start with the president. They start with somebody running for president saying, if I win, I'm going to do this, right? And then they declare it from on high, and they hope that 330 million people through several thousand forms of government adopt it. We believe America is different than that in our movement. We actually believe, like the founders did, that the best governments are the ones closest to us, and we want to get policies that protect families, that honor God, that help families thrive, that protect our religious liberty in all the thousands and thousands of governments we have at the most local level. And that will give us durability in the governments at the state level. And as we feed the best ideas from the local level up toward the federal government, where we can change one of the invasions that has occurred over the last 10, 15 years, and we know that, has been the invasion in the idea that you could subtract civil rights from a healthy, able-bodied person and give it to somebody else, and they call that equity, right? It's also been called bigotry. It's been called hate. It's been called a lot of other theft, selfishness, a whole bunch of things over the years, but it is not honoring equality, right? And it leads to these powerful injustices. But you have introduced this. This is what I wanted people to hear after that diatribe, Nick. You guys, FPCs, this is what I wanted families to hear. I don't want you to think, well, he can't pass that and get this governor to sign it, so he's not doing anything else. Guess what he's doing? He's working on picking away at the code to address the Human Rights Act, right? They've already written liberal language that we can attach this to. Tell us about that approach with LD 1337, that innovation that you're doing.
Yeah. And this is Representative Liz Caruso here in Maine sponsored this. And it really is the numbers don't work for us at the legislature, but we can't avoid having this conversation. And what the left here in Maine has said is, well, the Maine Human Rights Act says we must allow biological males in girls' sports because of how it's written. And so we sort of took them at their word and said, okay, well, if you want to comply like you say you want to, let's fix the code. Let's fix what the Maine Human Rights Act says and adjust it to ensure that it's clear biological males cannot. They also cannot be in a women's shelter. That's entirely defeating the purpose, right? What I'll tell you is they didn't take us up on it, but we had the conversation. And we will continue to have the conversation. And the legislature is leaving town. We're a part-time legislature. They're leaving town. They left this week. We're now going to the communities. We're going to go to our churches, our hometowns, and we're going to talk about the fact that this matters to Maine people, but the legislature has ignored it.
Right. And folks, the reason why I wanted to bring this up, first of all, is I wanted you to understand that your FPCs, your family policy councils, we have 40 of them in 40 states, which means we need 10 more. You'll see the link below if you're in one of the 10 states where we need a Nick Adolphsen and a board like we do. We're talking with Nick, the CEO of the Maine Civic League, and his leadership there. And our movement is really coming to life, and we're really going quickly in our growth, in our relevance, because we're bringing hard truths to a broken culture. And Jesus said, "You'll know it by its fruit." And we're seeing a lot of fruit by people joining our movement, but people are still confused by what we're doing here. We're sticking up for kids that are getting bullied. They have hearts full of fear, shame, pride, guilt, things like that. And we have people that are preying on them, adults, and trying to manipulate them and tell them something that's not true. I used alcohol and drugs when I was 12, 13 years old. Other people look at pornography. Other people turn to violence to solve their problems, what's wrong in their heart, that God-shaped hole that we have in our hearts. And we desperately need Jesus to be available in the Word in our schools and in our lives, and that is hard to do in these states that have been a blue state for a while. But you guys in Maine have done some really interesting things as a community, and you've sent some leaders. Tell us about Reagan Paul and some of those people that you've sent to become statesmen, folks, and the difference they're making in pointing the way, maybe growing a pathway for social conservatives to be politically viable in Maine. Tell us about the profile she cuts and the growth of conservatism in Maine.
Yeah, Reagan is a great example, just a stalwart fighter for what is right, for what is true, particularly on the life issue. I don't even know how many bills she sponsored this session on that issue, but let me just say we have in the Maine legislature, which this is surprising to churches when I tell them, but Reagan Paul, strong fighter, Katrina Smith, who also came to Statesman Academy, is the assistant leader in the House. Billy Bob Falkingham is the leader in the House. He's a strong believer. Trey Stewart is the Republican leader in the Senate, strong believer. We have men and women of faith inside that building that are striving every day to shine the light of the hope of the gospel onto every policy conversation. And they share my belief that at the end of the day, every good piece of policy is family policy, right? That's the root of what good policy looks like, is when our families are doing well, when it's policy that supports and strengthens a family, that's what defines a good piece of policy. And we have a number of folks in the legislature that are living their lives. They're living out this mission with that goal in mind. And I'll tell you what, it'd be a discouraging place to be if you didn't have men and women like that were there fighting the good fight.
Amen. And that's the role that you play. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to have Nick on, we're with Nick Adolphsen, the president of the Maine Civic League, one of the family policy councils that's doing so much in America. And this audience knows that we merged with Christians Engaged last summer, and we went from 220,000 Christians voting that were afraid, intimidated. Maybe their parents didn't teach them how to vote. They had not developed the habit. And decades goes by, and they're not voting. Or maybe you say you vote, but it's once every 4 years, not in the special elections, not in the school board elections, not when they're doing a sidewalk bond. Folks, that's the government that matters. There's usually 2 or 3 elections where you live every year, not one election every 4 years. We have decided that we are going to answer the call from God and to protect the American democracy. That's one of the things that I'm going to talk about here. By mobilizing Christians to vote. Christians do not vote at a higher percentage than the general public. Currently, we're going to alter that. 40% of us that are registered to vote, that are able-bodied to vote, that know who we want to vote for, do not vote. It's an act that would have the Father tell us we're a wicked slave when he comes back, because we did not invest our talents. We did not invest our bags of gold, the country, the state, and the school district that we already own. So, Nick, I want to declare this, and I want you to speak for not only yourself, but some of your peers. we really moved the needle in 2024 by getting people that had not voted before historically to vote. That's what the Democrats had spent 30 or 40 years getting good at. We're the movement now that is getting us to show up. And that's what showed up in 24. It surprised everybody, all 7 swing states. I think we're knocking on the door. Now that we've got the 7 swing states down, I think we're knocking on the door for Maine, and Virginia and Michigan. We already just got Michigan, but other states like that. Am I crazy, or is that what you're seeing when you talked about how close you are to a majority there in Maine?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm seeing here. And I think the crazier the policy gets on the left, the wider open people's eyes are, especially in the church. And I'm a firm believer that the lamp of liberty, the representative government that we have, that's going to shine bright only if it's shining bright first in our families and in our churches. We watch it get pretty dim in Augusta. We watch it get pretty dim in DC for quite a while. But if our families and our churches are engaging, are praying, and are doing the work, we're going to see this place turn around. And I genuinely believe that. It might take more than a year, right? It's not going to happen in a minute. The downward spiral took some time, but we're going to climb back out of this. And I think in the near term, we're going to see some success.
So this is what I want you to say now, and this will be the last question, but there's a lot of people listening to this, and the coin's dropping. They were with us in 24. They saw our work in 24 when we were funded to do it, and we won Wisconsin. And then they saw when they just went to the TV ads again in Wisconsin in February, and they didn't use social conservative door-to-door through the church marketing. And guess what? The left won that Supreme Court race going away. The fact is, people don't change their votes anymore based on what they see in a TV ad or a TikTok ad. They do it based on the people they're in a relationship with. So I'm just saying that for the record. I know a lot of people listen to this show, and the folks that are activists listening to it are saying, well, how do I get involved? I want to take my state rep seat now that I know I can manually do the hard way, that we can win maybe 10, 12 point swing seat by seat by doing it through relationships. What do those listeners, if they live in Maine, to sign up and raise their hand to let you and your team know that they want to help? How do they do that? And then speak openly to like how your colleagues too, like it's not just you, but say wherever you are, this is what the Family Policy Council wants you to do. This is how you can serve Jesus today. This is where we need your help. Let people know how to get involved today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that the root of all of this is spiritual, right? And so it starts with prayer. This is a war that we're not going to win through just sheer political strategy. We got to pray. It's going to be one on our knees. And that's where I start. And that's not always satisfactory to people. They want to do something, but it's got to start with that. I think from there, we need people who maybe they don't like politics, but they are willing to go stand in the gap in a school board, stand in the gap in a House seat or a state Senate seat in some of these local elections, or show up with their friends to encourage their family, get out and vote. It's all really basic stuff. It's none of it's earth shattering, but it really is, Craig, as you were saying, it is pray and it's engage. And that engagement can look different depending on who you are, but there's also sometimes very specific volunteer opportunities, right? And so to go to, cclmaine.org, to our website, or to the website of the Family Policy Alliance affiliate in your state, and just see what they're up to and see if there's a place that you can be a resource and you can help move the needle forward. But this is one heart at a time, right? A quick political win doesn't mean anything if you just get defeated a year later. This is heart change stuff that we need to make sure happens in our states so that it's for real, so that it's for the long term.
Well, thank you, Nick. And we've been talking with Nick Adolphsen, the president of the Maine Civic League. And you can see his heart. And I love that last answer, because that is our heart. That's what we are employed to do because of your support of the Maine Civic League and the 40 state family policy councils. We're a little bit different than other movements too. We want you to be affiliated with them first and mostly. That's where the most work you can do, and your investments, because that's where your hands and feet are. They're in your state organization. We also want you to support us because we aggregate, we do things together, and we bring good ideas from state to state, from school district to school district. That's the role of Family Policy Alliance. And it's with your support we're able to turn blue states red. So thank you again, Nick, for being with us today. Thank you all for joining us on this podcast. And until we talk again next week, blessings all.
Thanks, Craig.